Hi, my name is Dave. Today we're going to look at a couple of 16mm f/20 Goto Kogaku telescopes. And more precisely, we're going to look at the interesting mounts. And I want to point out that this one on the far right, on your right, is a completely 100% legitimate Goto Kogaku. This one is more of a kind of a Frankenscope, Goto Frankenscope. It's not 100% authentic. This mount doesn't go with this scope. Some of these features here are not quite 100% perfect Goto Kogaku. Let me start by telling you what these are. This on your right is a Goto Kogaku Model 105, 16mm f/20, the original mount, everything original. I even have all the eyepieces and box, the whole thing. So I showed you this in another video. And the reason I'm showing it again is because I wanted you to compare that with this one. Now this is a Goto High Score Model 452, which is effectively the same telescope as that. It's a 60mm f/20. It turns out it's a little bit different, a little shorter and stuff, but it's essentially the same telescope, and would have gone on a mount that would be effectively identical to that one, or something very similar to that. And what I've done here is, because I didn't have a mount for this scope, and I didn't have a scope for this mount, I put the two together. I had to make an adapter, a couple of special longer screws to go on here, so that this would fit. Here's a picture of that. With that adaptation, I was then able to put this telescope on this mount. This mount normally holds a 3-inch, 75mm. It's from a Model 107 Goto 3-inch telescope. A lot of things here are not 100% authentic. I had to make this. This is not even a Goto counterweight, although it's nearly identical. This is actually a Takahashi counterweight. I had to make that. This mount came in pieces. These guys, these slow-mo, they're not Goto. They would have originally been something with a straight rod, kind of like those other things. They work just fine though. This up here, I had to fabricate this. It did not have the slow motion worm gear and the housing here, so I had to fabricate that. So here are a couple of pictures of that process. Well, you can see that was kind of challenging to put that together. I want you to notice how much more beefy, how much more robust this mount is than that one. This is a mount for a 3-inch telescope. That's a mount that is more than sufficient for a 60mm f/20. It's a nice, big, sturdy mount for that telescope. But there's an old saying in telescopes, and that is you cannot overmount a telescope. A telescope needs as big and hefty a mounting as possible to keep it nice and stable. This one is a bit of overkill. It is much more stable than that mount, and therefore is a little bit more effective. It also, of course, has the price of being heavier and harder to lift and move into place and so forth. But one of the reasons I'm making the video is to specifically show you how this mount works. I absolutely love Goto Kogaku, and especially their interesting, quirky, strange, original mounts. So I'm going to give you some close-ups and show you how this wonderful mount works. Let me show you some of the interesting features of this mount. First of all, Goto always has an interesting way of adjusting the latitude. And this one is quite charming. There's a nice big locking bolt nut back here, so let me loosen that up. And then you can adjust these, and presumably you could use a turnbuckle in here if you needed to tighten it down. Actually, I'm just holding this by hand. You can see that there's a pin inside here that is rotating. And when I change this, I'm changing the latitude adjustment. So that's how you adjust the latitude on this strange telescope mount. Then of course you lock it down here when you're done. Make sure everything's all nice and tight. Let me show you how this works. On their other mounts, they have these spring-loaded. These are not spring-loaded. This is strictly tension here, although there is some flexibility. And there's a worm gear inside here. This is the worm wheel. Same thing going on up here. One of the interesting things about this is Of course, if you're going to change the right ascension of the telescope, you move it like so. Well, that might put the right ascension remote into a kind of a strange position. So what you can do to handle that particular problem is this. Loosen this and loosen this also. Then this will all rotate around, and you can move this around to the other side if you need to. Lock down the right ascension, lock down the slow motion. Now you've got your right ascension over here, which might be more convenient for you. Depends on which side you're on. Some telescopes have this with two slow motion controls out here, or the ability to switch this from one to the other. It's just about 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. That's the way it works on this particular scope. Let's put it back to its more or less normal configuration. Now, of course, you're going to move it right ascension and then maybe readjust all of that stuff. So then you have this. Now this doesn't really, you can't change the position of this. Of course, you're never going to want to. You want this always to be somewhere near the tail, near the eyepiece. And this comes out to conveniently be just exactly where you want it every time, no matter where you put it. So if you move it around like this or like that, well, got a little thing in the way here. Let's move that out of the way. So you move it around like such, or like this, or like that. Let's put it somewhere. Let's put it there, and then maybe lock it down. Okay, so you put something like that. Now you've got this at the eyepiece, convenient for you to use. I hope you've enjoyed having a quick look at these Goto Kogaku 60mm telescopes, and especially the 75mm mount. Thank you very much for watching.